Good afternoon. Okay, the mic is on. Everybody is set. Please take your seats because we're going to be going into the next session at the OECD Forum, and the session is called Entrepreneurship with a Cause. My name is Sasha Vakulina. I'm Euronews business editor. I'm going to be moderating this session. And this is something, we've given it so much thought during our prep calls and some meetings now. There's so much more to talk about, so many examples to bring up. So we're really encouraging all of you to participate. We definitely want to hear your stories and your answers and your comments on your experience on the subject. At the same time, if you want to, and if in case you're not here in this room, you're outside of the room and in the room as well, please go to the Bcast. That's the tool we're using here at the OECD during the forum. You have the instructions normally on screen, normally. If you go to Bcast, there we go, live, and the session code is OECD4. And this is how you can participate with sending your comments, with sending your questions, and also answering some of our questions. Of course, something that we're going to be answering and commenting here, discussing on stage as well. Now I'm going to introduce you the speakers on the panel. John Bryant, founder, chairman, and CEO at Operation Hope. We have Owen Song, CEO at Olive Union. Yeni Wahid, co-founder, Wahid Foundation. Tatiana Glad, co-founder and director, Impact Hub Amsterdam. And Ricardo Otero, CEO and general manager at Supra Cafe. I tried. And let's go straight away with the first poll question. This way we can all be on the same page. So, when working on this session with the OECD, we've come up with this question. According to the OECD research, less than 50% of startups survive more than 5 years, and only a fraction develop into high-growth firms. What do you think their survival depends on the most? And the options are easy access to finance, access to global value chains, regulatory certainty. These are the answers, and if you go with the code, there is also, there we go, government incentives, potential for innovation based on a whole support ecosystem. I totally understand that it's not easy to answer it with one option, of course, because probably you're going to list a few at least, but try, and then we're going to discuss probably all of them. Before I ask you this question, which is going to be later when we see the results of the voting with the audience, I would like to go with the question that might sound a bit generic, and yet, what led you to decide to become an entrepreneur?
Hello, everybody. I'm from the Black church. I'm used to seek and respond. One more time. Hello, everybody. There we go. All right. So we're going to have a conversation today. I grew up in South Central LA in Compton, California, and the short version of the story is my mom and dad divorced over money. And I saw my friends dying in my neighborhood, and I was tired of seeing it. And the problem was poverty. So a banker came in my classroom when I was 9 years old. He was teaching financial literacy. And he had on a blue suit and a white shirt and a red tie. He happened to be Caucasian. I had never met a Caucasian man in my neighborhood who wasn't a police officer back at that time. And this guy was like a Martian to me. He was wealthy, he was successful, and I couldn't figure out what he did for a living. And so I asked him, I raised my hand, I said, "Excuse me, sir, what do you do for a living? And how'd you get rich legally?" I was serious because nobody in my neighborhood got rich legally. You were a drug dealer. You were it was you were a gang. So he said, "I'm a banker and I finance entrepreneurs." I said, "Sir, I don't know what an entrepreneur is,
But I want it.
but if you're financing them and it's legal, I'm going to be one." And I went home and opened the dictionary to the word entrepreneur. It was a French word. Essentially, create something from nothing and create value. And I said, I want to do that. For what purpose? To rebuild my community. What's that called? A philanthropist. So that's where it started, and the endorphins kicked in the right side of my brain about possibilities. And literally, I went to the liquor store who sold candy and told him he was selling the wrong kind of candy. He said, "Go away, little boy. I've got a college degree." I said, "That's nice. I've got cavities. I know what kind of candy you should be selling." I'm 9. So he dismissed me, and I got a job working as a box boy at that store. And I quit 3 weeks later, went home, and with the information I got from where he bought his candy from, working as a box boy. And the short version is I went and got some inventory, sold that candy, which was on the way to school, put him put the liquor store out of the candy business when I was 10 years old. So made $300 a week when I was 10 years old. What that did to my self-esteem is still evident in the person that's sitting before you today. So literally it changed everything in my life. And literally it has helped me to change everything in the people who I care about's lives as a result of this thing called an entrepreneur.
We're going to go into other people as well and people you are helping now, but a little bit later. Oh, and what's your story? How did you come here? Why did you decide to go entrepreneurship?
I didn't have a huge dream in the beginning, but I saw a problem from my uncle. So I tried to help my uncle. That was the beginning of my business. My uncle used to have hearing loss, so he tried to get hearing aids, but he spent 2 months and spent $5,000 for hearing aid. The price and the cost he's paying is way too much. So I tried to fix it, and that was the beginning of becoming, entrepreneur to help my family.
Thank you. Yeni Wahid, what's your story?
Okay, we are in the business of this issue that every Miss World or Miss Universe contestants would aspire to, which is to build peace in the world. So I come from the largest Islamic organizations community in Indonesia, about 80 million of followers, which my great-grandfather founded. And we've always been marked by our attitudes towards tolerance and allowing people the rights to practice religious freedom, etc. So this is something that we always believe in. And our foundation has been around for about 15 years, but until certain years, and we felt that we're not creating the impact that we want to have. So we started thinking about using different approaches and engaging more local actors and creating more bottom-up approaches, etc. And that's when we create more impact. And we also realized that without the proper ecosystem and sustainability, thinking about sustainability, then you want to achieve a big impact. So that's how we thought that social entrepreneurship is the key here. You can create a real impact on the ground, but at the same time, creating a real sustainability as well. So that's the story.
Thank you. Tatiana, you co-founded Impact Hub Amsterdam. What brought you there?
Yeah, so the seed was, I think, planted when I was really young, and my parents were immigrant entrepreneurs to Canada, and they taught me that you can shape value in society through being an entrepreneur. So for me, entrepreneurship was a vehicle to create value in society, or create value out of nothing, as you mentioned. But I think I was really kick-started after working in a few different parts of society, and realizing that there were a lot of people with money not making the sustainable change I wanted to see in the world, not saving our trees or making the air better or food healthier. And so I think meeting more and more entrepreneurs with an impact orientation and the conviction, not always the money, but definitely the conviction, really turned my mind around to support them as well.
Ricardo.
Hello. I was born in a little village, and my father was a farmer. And he told me, you have to study because this is not very cool. It's not a good activity. So I studied business administration. And I decided when I was studying with my partner to build our own company. We didn't know which company. When you become entrepreneur, you have, I say, 4 P's, no? First of all, you have to look for your project. You have to be very patient. You have to look a good partnership, yeah. And is what I did. I remember the 4P. I don't remember now, but I went to Colombia in a train ship. I found an amazing country, amazing people, and amazing product, who was coffee. I was working in coffee business for 2 years, and I found my partners, I found my project, and I found a dream who has changed my life since 30 years ago. So this is why I'm in coffee business.
It's interesting because entrepreneurship and the examples and your stories that you've just shared, it's always, there is this dream factor there. It starts with a bigger idea and dreaming big and really trying to go for it as much as possible, of course. So this is the results of the poll. What do you think their survival depends on the most? The 56% potential for innovation based on a whole support ecosystem. That's 56, well, 54 now, percent, and 25% for easy access to finance. 54% for the whole support ecosystem. Tatiana.
Well, this is partly why we've created an impact ecosystem locally and globally, now in over 53 countries. So I believe in that. I believe finance absolutely has to be part of that ecosystem. I think part of it is also, it needs to be an ecosystem that supports the inner well-being of a person, of an entrepreneur, because I think that that capacity for a person to stay with the game and keep going, I think, is just as important as the external support.
Owen, you've shared your story is also very much based on your personal experience. That's the family situation that you really wanted to help solving. How do you define entrepreneurship with a course, and where does it differ from a standard business? Because one thing, of course, you don't necessarily have to be entrepreneur with a course to be an entrepreneur.
It's really tricky to answer.
That's why I'm asking.
Well, usually entrepreneur with a cause has like really strong mission to achieve in the very beginning. But other entrepreneur for like startups, they're just only looking for financial growth. They don't really value, social impact throughout the world. So I'd rather define those two with what comes first. Is finance comes first or impact?
So it's a brilliant answer. But you're actually sort of being gracious. Let me be blunt. There are people who are building a business that makes money, but those are not entrepreneurs. Those are transactions. That's not a relationship. When you're building something that has value and has value to society, that's good selfishness. And good selfishness is where I benefit and everybody else benefits more. And bad selfishness is where I benefit and everybody else pays a price for it. The mafia, a robber baron, somebody who runs a business who just gets interested in profit, to me it's the same thing. But if you're an entrepreneur, you have a cause. If you're a legitimate entrepreneur, actually you don't have to say, I want to have a cause. You do have a cause. Like Sam Walton, who you may not know that name, but he had a high school education. He had a storefront. You may know his little company. It's called Walmart. But it's the biggest retailer in the world today. But he started with just this dream of building value and creating value, low-cost goods for people he knew in his community. That wasn't social per se, but it had an incredible social impact. And there are thousands of examples like that, of people who get up every day on fire with this mission to do something meaningful in the world. But it doesn't necessarily have to, it's not a social mission. You just have a mission that has a social impact, which I think is essentially what you were saying. So do you have a relationship? I have a rule. It's called the Oprah Winfrey Rule. I don't do business with anybody who doesn't have as much reputationally to lose as I do.
But that's what you're saying now. That's not, it's a bit different when it comes to young entrepreneurs.
No, I had the same rule then. I'm not for sale. I'm not for sale. My reputation is not for sale. My integrity is not for sale. I have never done anything for $1 in my entire life. If I don't like you, I'm not doing business with you. Period. And I've built 40 enterprises around the world that's in 87 countries based on this philosophy. So I just think that people have got this thing wrong. We're digging in the wrong holes. It's
Well, and
not
the
about
other-
money, actually.
Sure, but at the same time, in this case,
It's about building wealth.
many people are getting that thing wrong because many of them are not doing it going different way, going rather into for the profit, for the revenues. They still do that.
Just jump
By the way, you can build wealth. There's making money and building wealth. Those are two different things. Wealth is a mindset. And if you do the right thing for the right reasons, you will build wealth and you'll make money. It's just to make sure that I'm circling up.
Yeah, I think you pointed out quite correctly the wealth creation, the similarities between regular business venture and social entrepreneurs that both intend to create wealth. But with social entrepreneurship, of course, the story doesn't end there. What are you going to do with the wealth that you have accumulated? That's the continuation of the story, because the wealth that you created is actually to create better impact in the society socially. So that's where I think the difference between social entrepreneurship and just regular business, because wealth creation, you can just go to your pocket, or you can go to the enriching the community and the society.
Tatiana.
Yeah. I was sharing over lunch that most of our entrepreneurs don't like to be called social entrepreneurs, and
That's
there's
why I
a
brought it
whole
up.
conversation there's a whole conversation to unpack around what that means, and it's contextual too. So our impact hubs, when you're looking at Eastern Europe, or you're looking at post-communist countries, or you're looking at South America or Asia, the whole conversation around social has been extremely interesting. So it's also not to ignore it. It's really unpacking what you mean by the wealth creation, right? That you mean beyond money. And so that's been interesting. And I think, what happens when I look at this, I was reading high growth firms. So then I think, well, the question actually needs to be about, as you grow, are you trying to grow the firm? Are you trying to grow impact? So that's the key question. And I think, what you need to grow impact is you also need to continually meet a need. So whether it's Sam Walton or somebody else, whatever that need is, are you meeting it? Are you resolving it? Because actually the mission of an impact-oriented entrepreneur should be to, resolve something at some point. If you're a good entrepreneur, you want to solve the problem at some point. So then you need to become, equally resilient and become somebody who wants to solve something else as well, and not get too attached to creating business to keep a problem at bay.
Yeah, I have a question. If you are not a social company, what are you? An unsocial company? Against people company? A few years ago, there were departments in companies who were called sustainable department. So what about the rest of departments? They are not sustainable. So Supracafe is a company, but we are focusing to be a sustainable company, but in all the things we do, and in all the departments, trying to be sustainable with all our people who is workers, with our producers. We are near people who is very poor, because coffee is produced by 20 million families who are underdeveloped, most of them. So there are big challenges. So the idea is, I don't think we have to make differences. Companies are social companies, and these companies are, how to define them. So the idea is we have to try to be holistic in all companies, and to push. Since this morning there were a nice conversation in the first area. They were speaking about they have to change the human being and their meaning, because we cannot be thinking that one company are making money and this is against the people, and there is another companies who are very shiny, who try to resolve all these companies. So this is my point of view.
Ricardo, and on your experience, well, you've been running the company for decades now. What was one of the biggest challenges you had to push through, when it comes to entrepreneurship with the cause? What was that moment the challenge probably that you can share the example with us and your experience with it, that you really felt that you had to push for it?
Well, really you have competence, and competence not always they plays with the same rules than you. So the most challenging thing I have to front during the last three decades is to listen people telling that they were helping the community and doing the opposite. So this is quite a lot impressive to me. I mean, oh, I'm facing this kind of greenwashing or something similar in some of the for instance, in finance. It says, no, we have a lot of finance for microcredits. The most cheaper microcredit for our producers is 30%. And I'm like an entrepreneur, I don't know how to run a business if I have to pay 30% of interest. So, and you go to a lot of meetings like this here. Oh, we have a lot, big amounts of money with the bank, World Bank, bank, but always in the third floor or the second floor. But when it is going to the first floor where people need this money, brush. And this kind of things is what you face, and this is very, very, I don't know how to tell. For in Spanish we say frustrating. Okay.
How frustrating is that, John? I know that you do have things to say when it comes to microcredit and financing, and this challenge and entrepreneurship.
The question specifically is...
Was on the challenges, and Ricardo commented on the financing, yeah.
I really don't have a lot of problems with financing, but let me back up, because I think that this is the same part of the same narrative. We've screwed up the definitions of what we're looking for. Capital comes from the Latin root word capitas, which means knowledge in the head. People think capital is money. Capital is not money. Currency is money. And currency is a means of exchanging value. That's all it is. I mean, I could give you a shirt and you can give me your jacket, and that is a form of barter in exchange of some value. We've just exchanged value. Capital is a perspective. Wealth is a mindset. So Coca-Cola or Nestle, whichever company you want to pick, those companies have value, capital value, above the line of their revenues. That's how that brand value is about how you feel about that company. Literally. So literally, these companies are trading on the stock exchanges around the world on value that has to do with how you feel, not based on a number on a piece of paper. You've got to be profitable, of course, otherwise you're not going to be in business. So what I was saying earlier at lunch about, which is a slightly different point about microcredit, is I don't want anybody saying that Operation Hope is a microcredit lender. I think microcredit is fantastic. My guy Muhammad Yunus has done a fantastic job with that. It's important in many parts of the world. But I don't want to promote that beyond its necessity, because I want you in banking. I want so-called poor people. I don't see them as poor. I see them as emerging markets. Okay, I think we're looking at it differently, because every big company in the entrepreneurship space was once a small one. Goldman Sachs was a guy named Goldman and a guy named Sachs selling stuff with a briefcase door to door. All these big companies that were created by entrepreneurs were once small ones. So the guy who made this suit and the shirt that I'm making, we put in business. He got a $35,000 loan from Union Bank of California after we helped him get his credit score up and get his confidence up and put him in an entrepreneurship training program, changed his perspective and his mindset. He walked into the bank because we knew the criteria, and he got a loan for $35,000. He's now doing $1.6 million a year in revenue. This is his 10th year in business. That's giving a man a fishing pole, not giving a man fish. He can now say he's a banking customer. I think we've got to vertically integrate this from microcredit all the way up as a ladder to banking and access to capital, and even going public to the public markets. That's the vision, versus having this bifurcated model where poor people are over here being banked and supposedly everybody else is over here. That's just not my vision for the world.
Yeni, what are some of the challenges that you have been facing? Is it the financial and access to finance as an issue when you're
I think
experiencing?
John, again, touched on the very important issue about mindset. And that's, I can give you the answer of the regular challenges that most entrepreneurs face, access to finance, etc., the right ecosystem, blah, blah, blah. But in my line of work, I found that the most difficult thing is to change the mindset of people, to convince them that they can actually make it. You know, it's not easy. I mean, we also in the business of providing micro lending, so it doesn't stop just by giving them money and then give them access to credit, but they're also making sure that they know what to do with the money. They know how to manage the cash flow. They know that they have targets that they want to acquire, that they want to achieve in 4 years, in 5 years. And the most important thing that is that they want to change their lives. And this is something that you cannot teach, really. You need to guide them. You need to hold their hands. You need to convince them, and be there when they fail, and just help them get on their feet again. So I think it's a changing of mindset is the most difficult.
Tatiana.
Yeah, I agree with the change in mindset. I am provoked, to throw out a little provocation around here, that I think with entrepreneurs with a cause, there's also a bigger question around, as you grow, like, what is growth? What are the ethics of growth? Who are you serving if you're banking with a bank that has caused certain problems in the world? And also, how do you not recreate the system that got us into the mess in the first place? So I think, there's that aspiration to grow. The question is, what are the ethics around growth? And I feel that this is a conversation that's super alive in our sector, and I think bleeding into all kinds of other pieces of the system, because it's not sustainable. And the alternatives, being an alternative system, is not, in a sense, big enough either. It doesn't provide an adequate counterweight. So we find ourselves in this conundrum, or maybe it's a creative tension, of how do you work with a flawed system and how do you work with a system that isn't yet. So I just throw that out there.
Owen.
Maybe my experience is good answer for this question. So because of my uncle's problem, I decided to develop a smart hearing aid, so competing with traditional hearing aid. So the R&D cost was huge. So I at that time I was a college student, so I didn't have any money in my pocket. So I decided to do crowdfunding. I shared ideas and I raised 1 million US dollars through the crowdfunding. So that was the seed money. I started to develop my idea. And then later, I had so many meetings with venture capitals to raise more fund for develop my product more. But venture capital all day says, Owen, what are you doing? You should make your company more profitable. I was like, no, the reason why I'm doing this is, trying to make hearing aids much more affordable. But they were like, no, your technology is good, make it price higher. I was like, wow. But that is the real world, because that's what venture capital do. But I was having so many meetings, like trying to find best match for us. We found one company who share our vision together. So last year, we raised 10 million US dollars for fundraising, which is like pretty decent amount of money for keep sustain our company. So it's matter of choice, I guess.
But it wasn't easy.
It super hard. I was almost giving away.
I mean, to find the right company, of course. I don't mean just to find any, of course. Do you have any questions? Maybe you are entrepreneurs or you want to start the business. Do you have questions? We're going to give you the mic here and we're going to be glad if you join the discussion. Just raise your hand so that I can see you. Yeah? Oh, fantastic. Can we have the mics here? Just can you, yeah, we're going to bring you the mic. Can you just stand up so we can see you well everywhere? The mic is coming somewhere, hopefully.
You can have
Yeah, that's what I wanted to do. That would be easier. Yeah, I think so.
Or not. So here is me. There we go. Oh, yeah, it's working. Great. Went down. So I am Lucia from Eidos Global. We have a project on social innovation of young people. So we are collecting all projects from young people around the world. We have a couple from Indonesia, actually, a couple from Africa, and we had a couple of very interesting situations around this by the fact that many young people are encouraged around the world to solve the issues that they feel are important to be solved, but most of the time it just stops there. There's no support, there's no fund, there is not enough funding, there is not enough knowledge about how to build a company, and how to build a company that has a cost and how to monetize that. Because everyone has good ideas. The problem is, how do you make a living and pay the rent as well? So that's, and talking about the mindset as well, that was one of the biggest challenges we had with young people in most countries. They just feel like money is a bad thing. And if you are in the social area, you shouldn't be making any money at all. So it's a cultural thing as well to deal with. And my question is, what is your perspective about young entrepreneurs to join the world of working with a cause? And what would be a nice advice that you would give to the next generation of entrepreneurs?
That was great to hear from you. Thank you so much. Yeah. Tatiana, you want to jump in on the, because we discussed a little bit of the
Sure.
what to do first, you know, as a young entrepreneur. We discussed this a little bit before the session.
What first comes to mind is a statistic that the World Bank came out with, that 67% of the world's GDP is due to small, medium enterprises, right? And it's the world's largest employer.
Oh, it's totally the backbone of the European economy. We're in Europe, that's
So
just over 90%.
I'm sure many of you could throw in more statistics. But to keep this perspective at an aggregate level, I say absolutely we need a next generation involved in shaping its own future. Right? So the ethics of that are, you know, get involved in a place where you get support and such. One of the things that we run is something called the Business Model Challenge, and that's to help people look at, great idea to change the world, is it viable as an enterprise? Because again, I look at entrepreneurship as a vehicle for change. So again, it has to last. You have to be able to sustain, you have to be able to pay your rent. If not, you know, your good idea falls flat. So there are many different programs around the world that can support people. The question is how to team up, you know, and create partnerships, and also patient partnerships, because none of this happens overnight. You know, there's many times I think everybody here has tried different ventures. I mean, the silly little company I started when I was 9 years old doesn't last, you know, but I learned a lot. I learned about a P&L. I learned how much inventory costs when you hang on to it, these kinds of things. So we need lessons earlier on for people to practice, and this needs to be embedded in our psyche to understand and to learn and get opportunities to try, and like you said, to fail, so that we learn from our failures, and that it's not a bad word.
Annie, what do you think about that? What would you advise? What would
They have to ask. They have to knock around. They have to convince people of their ideas, and they have to find the right mentors as well. The right mentors can make a bold difference to you know, being able to create your dream. I don't know, dream entrepreneurs, for example. The right mentor can open doors for you, can give you the right advice on what to do and who to approach for fundings, etc. So for me, I think it's finding the right mentor would be my advice.
Well, I think that the future is in this kind of business. I think people is I'm most interested in invest in sustainable businesses and social businesses, because I think the society is what is asking for, and I hope this is raising. The idea is that they have to make value. I mean, not profit just to put the profit in the bank. No, but the business has to be has to create value, has to create money just to survive. So if someone is thinking that a social business has not to make value, it's wrong. This is the idea.
So 5 years ago, I love all the answers, particularly yours. Let me pivot off this. 5 years ago, in the Middle East, I was at offices in Morocco and Saudi Arabia. I was asked, how do we create change there? They needed to create 100 million jobs for young people, around 20, by 2020, this year, next year. Okay, the number hasn't moved. They've been throwing money. The point we talked, been throwing money at the problem. 82% of all jobs in North America are private sector jobs. 82% of all jobs in the Middle East are government jobs. Think about this. So if you model what you see, I mean, I love myself because my mother told me to. I'm an entrepreneur because my daddy was an entrepreneur. I didn't come from Mars. Like, I saw my father do it, and so I wanted to do it. The banker came in my classroom. I had access, so I understood capital. You literally model what you see. Conversely, if you hang around 9 broke people, you'll be the 10th. That was funny. So you guys are a hard audience. So my point is, this is about culture, not about cash. It takes 20 years to change a culture. This is about culture, not about cash. You can keep throwing money at these problems. It's not going to change it. You need the role models. You need the resiliency. I found the question fascinating. This first question, what's your biggest obstacle? And the closest thing, the one that got closest was the one about, I think it was an ecosystem. But none of this hits on the mark. Like, I'm an entrepreneur. None of that answers my question. The number one asset I've got is I'm resilient. Over it, around it, to it. I'm going to get to it. I never give up. An entrepreneur works 18 hours a day to keep from getting a job. I take no for vitamins. I'm giving you guys good stuff. It's going right over your head. So, and everybody up here, my guess, we have not had this conversation, but my guess is resilience is really high on your list. This is mindset. Mindset, role models, environment. That means leaders setting the tone, right? Capital is this. Money comes last. I think we have been digging in the wrong holes, is really my larger point, which is why you're not going to solve the problem. This is actually not hard to solve. People want to do for themselves. They don't want a handout. But if you don't know better, you can't do better.
Owen.
Yeah, little description of my government's, Korean government's event. Korean government's really doing good supporting social entrepreneur. So they're every year they selecting candidates and support huge amount of money to sustain their businesses. So it is kind of creating subculture of thing. But after the fund get ended, only half of them remained. It's kind of they all understand, what comes first and what is important, but in the end of the government support, they don't know what to do. So even the culture should be really, really bottom up kind of, yeah. Instead of government force them to create, that's the point. Yeah, that's the point I want to make. Yeah.
We're gonna take another. Yes, can you just stand up, please, if you have the mic next to you? Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much. What about administrative burden? I mean, the entrepreneurial mindset has evolved very much. It has been going digital, but you still, in order to create a company, you still have to file piles of documents everywhere and apply for licenses. Now we, in Estonia, we are thinking about trying to think about changing the mindset and creating like an entrepreneurship account which the government actually provides for the entrepreneur, and then the entrepreneur just subscribes to the account and then can do all this administrative stuff to this account. What do you think about this kind of ideas, new ideas of creating enterprises from the bureaucracy side? Thank you.
Well, I have just remembered the fourth P is the most important. And it has to be with resilience, passion. You can make any business if you have passion. And if you have passion, you can go through the papers and you can get the money. But you have to have a big passion. I say project, of course, you have to have an idea, and this idea has to be a good idea. I mean, they have to produce value, but you have to take this idea in your heart, like a person, to have passion. And passion is the more resilient food for growing up a business. It's not, I have known a lot of people who says, well, I will try to do this business because there is some aids, new aids by the government, they give you. This is rubbish.
That's right.
This is rubbish. You have to have a good idea. You have to feel your idea to get it passion, and you go through. And sometimes even you have passion, you cannot get the goal. But most of the people I know that have been successful in business, all of them have passion what they do, and they have like my partners here.
By the way, here's your quote for the day. You have to have passion. If you don't have passion, everything else is rubbish. That's your quote for the day.
Tatiana.
Yeah, I think I just want to say also surround yourself with good people. So you brought up entrepreneur, which comes from the French, and it's really entreprendre, you know. And the definition I really learned was about to bring a combination of resources together. And I was told to surround yourself with people as good as you or better than you. So the thing I learned as an entrepreneur going through all the paperwork was surround yourself with great people and great mentors and a good lawyer, you know, something like that. Like just to really find the people who have the expertise. But I learned so much by going through the paperwork. I learned a lot about the legal system. I learned a lot about the fiscal system. I learned a lot about, you know, how to support other entrepreneurs as well. What I was most surprised about, it was the illusion across, particularly across Europe, when we were scaling 100 social enterprises across Europe as part of an EU program, was how disjointed the regulations are. Really. And I think we were looking to Estonia for some of the solutions. But I think, you know, there is something about an entrepreneur not having it easy and having to go through it, although I do agree it could be simplified.
Very quickly. A house divided cannot stand. So if you have a union and a company going in different directions, it's not going to have any success. If you have a government and its people at crosswinds, it's not going to have but limited success. The reason I went in to advise the last 3 U.S. governments at a presidential officer level was I wanted to affect the policy for entrepreneurs to unleash potential within everybody. So if you're here, you have influence. And we're talking in some ways about individual success, but you can also influence your governments back home, because if they're not trying to unleash the potential of every human being, they're going to fail. The government's going to fail. The country will not have its success. You're not going to have GDP. You're not going to have a tax base, because tax base comes from payers, which comes from revenue, which comes from, it's a circle. So this is all about economic energy, all of it. Are you doing the things as country leaders to inspire economic energy and unleash the power of your entrepreneurs? That means we need to check the process for paperwork. That means we need to check to make sure that it's an efficient process that lifts up entrepreneurs. Everything needs to be aligned with responsible growth in that country, or you're not going to have it. That's why I gave the example of the Middle East being sort of throwing money at the problem and not seeing success. One quick example is Delta Airlines. Delta Airlines is one of the best airlines in the world. By the way, highly profitable. Not communist, not socialist, capitalist. But they took $1 billion US and gave it to the ramp workers. Listen now. Ramp workers, flight attendants, invested. They said to their board, if we make our profit and then we hit a mark above that, the mark above that gets shared with the workers. What do you think that did to the attitude of the flight attendants? Boosted it up. That's why when you get on a plane for Delta, everybody's smiling. Because everybody's got a check. They shared in the value creation, and they feel like they're a partner with the company. And now all boats rise. Why can't we do that at scale? I won't talk anymore. That's not true, but I won't talk anymore right now.
I don't think so. Some reason I don't think so. Let's move a little bit. We're going to go back. We're going to go back to the audience. I just have a few more things to bring up here on the panel, of course, because so many things to discuss. And the next poll question that we worked upon is on the SMEs. And think about it. Of all SMEs, how many technology-based SMEs are there? More than 50%, around 30, 40, 15, 20, less than 10, I don't know. How important, please do vote, you know how to do it already, you've done it. What do you think about it? Owen, what do you think on this one, on how many technology-based SMEs are there? And how important is for SMEs, for entrepreneurs, when it comes to technology and innovations?
My answer.
I know the answer. I'll surprise you.
Yeah, I see a lot of SMEs, but only like few numbers has like really technology based. Like, you know, technology is this era I think it's everywhere. It's on internet. So the one person who has a technology is not just enterprises, so all over. So um, I guess
So do you think it's like really pretty impossible to run and to be an entrepreneur now without it,
without it, yeah.
without going innovative and without going technology?
Mhm.
The only distinction I would add is technology is an end or technology is a means.
Mhm.
I think there's many, many social innovations out there that wouldn't call themselves a technology business, but absolutely need technology to take the social impact to scale. So that I'm seeing more and more. There needs to be more collaboration between the technology startups and the so-called social enterprise startups to make impact happen.
Ini.
Well, I wouldn't know the exact number of how many SMEs are there that are technologically based, but I would guess not that many. Reason being is that not many people, not many communities, if it's social community-based enterprises, not many people or not all people are digital literate. So you actually need to guide them to this kind of landscape. This is a new landscape for many people. And so, of course, there are many SMEs who have succeeded in trying to to launch their products using more technology, and you get more benefits by doing that. You get access to marketplace, etc. But I think it is still one hurdle that many SMEs are actually facing to utilize technology to to use it as a platform to be more productive. So that's my bet.
I want to add some comments. People don't buy technology; they buy products. So having technology is not meaning just enterprise. So that's the thing I wanted to say.
Jonah?
Without, sorry,
No, you go ahead.
without technology, there is no progress. There is the problem with for instance, in coffee, the first part of the chain, they have a very lack of technology. They have producing coffee like 3, 4, 5 decades ago. So without technology, not one specific technology, because technology is improving every day very fast, but small, medium companies, we don't access so fast to technology, and we have a disadvantage with big companies because the size and because the fast they involve the technology. But without innovation and without technology, there is no future, there is no progress.
John?
So the absolute answer to your question is the number is small. It has to be small because technology is expensive and because patents require lawyers and all of that infrastructure is very expensive. So it has to be the number is low. I don't know what the number is. It has to be low. It has to be like, I don't know, 10, 15%, something very small. But it's also 100%, meaning if you're living today and operating a business, you're using technology. But by the way, none of it matters. So I'm at my hotel trying to get to lunch with my fellow panelists today, and I'm on Uber because I've got technology. So I use my Uber. I don't need taxis. They're on strike. I'll do my own thing. I hit Uber. And the lady says she's on her way. I can see who the driver is. 25 minutes later, no driver. She got lost. So another 25 minutes, she's still not there. I'm finally calling her on the phone. OTEC. I'm calling her on the phone. She finally shows up. She's lost. Nice lady. And and then she gets me here at a reasonable amount of time. My point was, all I remember is how she treated me when I got in the car. The technology was supposedly bulletproof, but it failed us. The thing that gave her a 5-star rating when I got out of the car was how she treated me. So technology is going to continue to evolve. The internet was what the television set used to be. The television set was what the radio used to be, and radio was Morse code. It's all technology, but human beings is the whole show. When I buy a company, I don't buy buildings. I buy the management team. Back to people, all right?
Tiana?
Yeah, I couldn't say it better than him, but one thing I do want to highlight is how it's creating transparency. So whether it's blockchain and supply chains, I was sharing that example over lunch about tracking food supply chains with blockchain, coffee chains and such like that are starting to do that, or whether it's currency transfers that don't have a middle bank, such like that. We're starting to see new impact entrepreneurs start to use technology to create transparency and less middle people.
And the result is between 30 and 60 of all SMEs can be characterized as innovative, but only approximately 10% technology based. We should bet for the next one, probably. We've got more questions here. Yeah, we just need a mic here, and can you, can you stand up? Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much for all these very interesting interventions. I just wanted to ask you maybe a provocative question regarding the fact that about scalability. We hear a lot about it, and my question is, do you think that social businesses should compete with the big blue chip companies, and how they could do that? Because there are strategic ways to avoid the entry of new competitors.
Great question. Thank you very much. Ricardo?
I hope
one of the P's.
I hope that social companies will be the most in the future, and of course they can put in one side the blue, you say blue companies, blue chip, because if you don't dream in that way, you don't get it. Remember, so I see that every day people take into consideration social things, the human being. I was reading a marketing book who was sponsored by Indonesian government, who was very, very interesting, and he was telling something like people in general wants to live in a better world. So I think in that. So I know that this world is horrible, but if everybody is doing his best, like we are trying to do, I think the social businesses will be the most in the future. So I hope so, I think so, and I will work for trying to put my sand in.
Then I wanna add upon your question just to follow up. In this case, as you say, if it is so important, of course, and all the businesses have to be going on the model with the cause, okay? Why aren't all of them doing it yet? Is that the question? Why not? It is good for everybody. It is good for business. It is good for people running the business. It is good for people working there. Good for everybody. Good for environment, for sustainable goals, for everything. Why are not they doing it yet?
I can only speak about me. I do my best, be sure of that. So I invite everybody around me to try to do the best way. I'm sure I'm doing wrong things. I'm sure of that, but I'm trying don't do that. So we have started a technological park just to try to get knowledge and and to try to get innovation for a poor area. Trying to do it environmentally responsible, because we have a lot of trees, a lot of resources to look for, and the only thing I can say is I try to do things by facts. We are a small company, 39 workers. We are not a big company. We started by 33 years ago. I have passion, and I try to do my best, and I invite the rest to do the same, but it's the only thing you can do is trying to como se dice, predicar con el ejemplo, to put your example and to do your best.
To set an example, yeah. Owen.
I'm pretty sure young generation have some sort of like ego or willing for making social companies, but they haven't seen enough successful stories and role models yet. So they're kind of like hesitate and decide to do, other business.
So I think there should be, in some sense, more of storytelling about it, more of good examples, even if it goes to bigger companies, and then young entrepreneurs, for example, young in the sense of course, you know, starting the business, then they would see those examples and they would rather go their way.
And plus, it's associated with culture and perception,
Mhm.
so it takes time. It's not just, you know, we cannot force them, you know, this is cool.
You picked up the mic. I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah, go.
Okay. So, you know, building on Ricardo's comment before about how to mainstream this social impact onto just regular companies so that they all strive not just for profit, but also creating more impact on the society. That's the question. And the answer is, if there's no incentive for them, they're not going to do it. So it comes down to incentives, whether it comes from the government, whether, you know, maybe in the form of tax break or, I don't know, social punishment, people not buying their products, etc. But if there's no incentives for them to change their way of doing business, then it's not going to change. So that's the key thing, I think, to mainstreaming this idea. And also your question about whether entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs especially, should compete with the blue chips companies. They should. They should strive to disrupt the whole operation of the system. I mean, for example, in my country, we've got this Uber type of motorcycle, but it's not a motorcycle. It's called Gojek. It's a social enterprise. Started as a social enterprise. The founder wanted to create more jobs by using engaging more people who owns motorbikes, you know, to get more income, but totally disrupted the system. And now, of course, we've got our own taxi drivers who went on protest as well. So they should aim for this. They should aim for changing of the environment. And when you're young, when you're new, you can afford to fail in a way, you know. But as long as you've got a good idea, you've got the capital.
It's a brilliant question. It's probably the most important question today, okay? Let me be a little disruptive in the answer. I'll give you two answers quickly. One, you know about Operation Hope, maybe. If you know, it's easy to search. I also created a company called the Promise Homes Company 2 years ago. 0 assets, for profit. I created with the mindset of a big company. So I decided I was going to be institutional quality from day one. I paid my nonprofit a fee to do free financial coaching for the residents, the renters of my homes in the Promise Homes Company to get their financial resiliency up. As they got their financial resiliency up, I rewarded them with gift cards for $100 at every benchmark. You pay your rent on time, I'll give you another $100. You get your rent, you get your credit score to 700, which is high in the US. I'll reduce your rent by 10% permanently, which sounds like charity, but it's not, because if you have a higher credit score and better habits, you're going to pay your bills on time, which means I'm not chasing you for rent, which means I can afford, I've got less noise in my balance sheet. So reducing your rent, rewarding you for that, rewards me with a better occupant. I then took all the maintenance money, millions of dollars, and programmed it for local businesses, plumbers, electricians, landscapers, people who do painting in the local community. So now I'm rewarding small businesses with contracts based on my big business. That's about $6 million a year now in renewable philanthropy. I call it renewable philanthropy, a job at a living wage. So now the communities don't hate me for being there. The third thing I do is if you stay with me for 3 years, I'll let you buy the home you rented from me, and I'll vouch for you to the bank. Now, this little concept that I just told you about, I grew from 0 to $100 million in assets in 2 years. I'm the largest minority owner of single-family rental real estate in America in 2 years. I did it part-time with 90% of my time at Operation Hope. But I had an institutional mindset, and I basically had the mindset that we're talking about here, just applying it to business. I actually think that what you're talking about already exists. We're not storytelling well. What big company is publicly traded doesn't have a foundation, doesn't have a diversity strategy, is not smart enough to focus on women? Think about this. This is all about how they're trying to influence how you feel about them. And the companies who don't do this get washed away whenever there's a problem. Global economic crisis happened in 2008 in the US. All the companies who had shaky reputations, they're all gone. The only ones that survived were the ones that had brand equity and credibility above the line of profitability, if this makes sense to you. So I think that this does exist. It's imperfect. In the US, we have something called the Community Reinvestment Act, by the way, which is essentially institutionalizing this philosophy of doing well and doing good. I think we just need to do better storytelling of the good examples, which I think was your example, and we need to raise those up as sort of a best practice that other companies can model. There's a wrong perception that in order to be a capitalist, you have to be a jerk. It's wrong. You can do well and do good too.
We have a question here. Can you just stand up because we're not going to be able to see you? Thank you.
Yes. My name's Raquel Marty, and my academic field is philanthropy. And I've heard things of philanthropy and things that are not that related to philanthropy when you talk entrepreneur. But I do encourage that we take a look at the share value of Michael Porter out of Harvard and the model of share value. When you're starting a company or when you're in advance of a company. Because at one point, definitely, what he had been talking about, passion, it's going to hurt everybody if the company doesn't really dedicate a percentage of its time or activity or profit to that passion, be it to the people that work or be it to a philanthropic cause. It's going to be putting at risk the business that the person's at. And there's enough research related to that, its relationship with philanthropy within the business sector. So I encourage that young people, when they're talking about businesses, and I'm seeing them a lot, are also being good, very good philanthropists to their community and to the passion that they started when very young. So I encourage to continue that.
There we go. This is the example of great storytelling. Thank you very much. Thank you for your comment. We having another question here. Would you stand up, please? Or a comment. We want to hear from you anyway.
Great. Thanks very much. My name is Adam, and I'm from Canada, if you couldn't tell. And I'm starting an affordable housing company in Malawi. And my question is specifically for John. We're trying to do something similar whereby we co-buy a house with people and share on the down payment and then realize capital appreciation as the house is sold. The problem is the regulatory uncertainty around home ownership and equity in corporations in the countries that we want to work in. So my question is, how would you go about being profitable and effective in that situation? Thanks.
So Ambassador Andrew Young has said to government leaders in Africa, you can make more money honestly from a growing economy than you can steal from a dying economy. So I think you need to walk into the government offices in wherever you happen to be. I'm not going to pick on Malawi, but wherever you happen to be. And you need to do literally a deck, an investor's deck. You need to do investors deck. One for the investors you want to invest in your business. You do a separate investors deck for the government office because they're financially illiterate. Two, you need to say, if you keep running your country like this is what it'll look like, which is a slow devolution. But if you do individual property rights and then you allow entrepreneurs like me to come in and work with people to own their own home, that'll then create a tax base and a tax payment. It'll create more equity value. That will then create more consumer spending, which will create more investment in small business, which then creates more tax base, which creates more GDP. And your whole balance sheet for the country grows and you'll look like a hero. Which one of these do you want? That's my short answer.
We have anybody?
I'm surprised I did that quickly, aren't you?
That was very quick. I appreciate. Do we have more here? Please raise your hand if you want to say something or you want to ask a question.
Or share an experience.
Or sharing your experience. We really want to hear about your experience. Please.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Aline. I'm doing an MBA in Innovation Management here in France. But I come from community development in São Paulo, Brazil. And I have been there a few weeks ago. And it was important. I have gone with a friend to a conference or a talk with some kids from high school. And it was really impressive. After when he finished, some of the kids come to talk to me about asking how is the experience, how could I get there, from where I came from, and how could I get to France and do an MBA. And I just want actually to do an invitation for you that are here. I know that you all are social entrepreneurs who are really concerned about the people. So just please don't forget to go to encourage the people that are there, because you are the role models. All of us here. It's important for us to hear you, but also it's important for them that they don't have many models to follow, to have you guys as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Tatiana, please take
Can
it.
I just say something? I was actually in Sao Paulo a few weeks ago, and we had our global gathering of impact hubs in Florianopolis. And one of the things I learned from our Brazilian impact hubs was also about how to create opportunities for people to create their own opportunities. So our impact hub in Sao Paulo invites young people from the favelas to create their own programming to help more young people from the favelas learn. But they're supported by the community of entrepreneurs. Right? So like, this is the whole thing about there are many levels to creating opportunities, and also to highlight the stories of amazing people. I've been in some of those favelas. There are amazing social entrepreneurs or impact entrepreneurs who exist in those places but are not seen. And so I think it's people like you who build bridges, and that's extremely important. Because I think also going back to the other question, I just want to highlight something about this whole concept of translocal we've been working with Impact Hub. So maybe the answer is in the big multinational. It's maybe not the answer of one small enterprise to make a difference, but that translocal collaboration that happens in forums like this, that happens in networks, that happens in the kinds of enterprises that are being set up here are really important, I think, for the future.
You've all emphasized how important it is to set a good example and to show it and to tell about it. If I may, to wrap it up, what do you think are the key things, key factors for entrepreneurs to focus on in the future? Take it as a recommendation to other entrepreneurs or to those who just want to go into entrepreneurship. No? No? Take the responsibility. I know it's a hard one, I know.
No, it's not.
No, it's not. Go.
No, you want to change the world. Otherwise, what are you doing? Look, who in here doesn't want to have a legacy? I'm talking to you. Who in here doesn't want to have a legacy? Let me rephrase it. Who wants to have a legacy? All right? So everybody wants the world to know you were here. Everybody does. It's common sense. So whatever you're doing, do it with both feet. Don't get half pregnant. Be passionate about it or don't do it. And if you think about it, unless you're born into wealth, that's what really entrepreneurship came from. If you came into what used to be Ellis Island in the United States, you saw these big office towers. You couldn't go get a job. You didn't know anybody in there. So it's really funny to me that Goldman Sachs is considered this institution now. It literally was two Jewish guys 100 years ago who couldn't get a job, who decided to go create their own job. It was one guy was named Goldman, one guy was named Sachs, and they sold financial services door to door with briefcases. Now it's a conglomerate in the world. That's the story of so many businesses that we take for granted. You've got to believe that you're special. You've got to believe that you can create value. Not just your mayor, your governor, your president, your prime minister. You. It's your country. It's your country. And you get to decide how you live your life and what your contribution is. And entrepreneurship just might be that door where you can create something out of nothing, employ people, inspire women, bring dignity to your community, nurture and cultivate a whole generation of entrepreneurs. What's your legacy? It's real simple. Do you want to change the world? Then start where you stand.
Ricardo, what's your recommendation?
Yeah. Well,
After an hour of talking, that's the first clap I got, isn't it?
You're gonna get a bigger one after when we wrap it all up, Once it's done.
You clap to get me to stop talking. That's different.
well, of course, I agree with the passion, because passion is the most ingredient. But I live in Madrid, and I go often to our company in Colombia. It's in a very poor by the moment, poor area. Is Cauca. And I feel I see more future in Cauca than in Madrid. I see more future in the eyes of people in Cauca than in Madrid. I see more resources and more things to do in Cauca than in Madrid. Of course, they need to improve, they need education, they need ideas, and it's because we built Tecnicafe just to have a platform for all these young people, just to stay there, not to go to the big cities to do nothing. But there are a lot of things to do to make a better world. There are a lot of things to preserve, because I'm afraid that in the way we are, as I saw that the trees I told at the beginning that I was born in one region in the central part of Spain, in La Mancha. When I was child, there was a lot of trees. There is no trees anymore. There was a lot of water. There is no water anymore. So I have seen myself the climate change. I see a lot of resources in Colombia, and I'm trying to tell them, please, we have to do something to preserve this, because I don't want to these people who is now 7 years, when he will be 57 like me, they want to see more water and more trees and so on. But a lot of things to do, a lot of things to preserve, a lot of things to do through innovation, through ideas, and through passion. Passion.
One of the things I learned from one of my first investors was, he said, if you don't speak, nobody will hear you. So if you have an idea or a dream, or however crazy it is, or whatever, or you have a need, if you don't ask for money, nobody's going to give it to you. If you don't ask for social capital, no one's going to show up to help you. So to believe it's all there, but to really make that sound. And he gave me a little quick lesson on quantum physics. If you scream here, something will hear you here. So really make yourself known and reach out and find your tribe and keep speaking.
Yeah, actually I do my work based on my own selfish reason, which is I want a better future for my kids. I want a better environment for my kids to live in. And that's the reason why we started this Peace Village initiative, for example. It's how to create a social cohesiveness on a societal level, and at the lowest level of society. And using different approaches, from economic incentives to peace building mechanism, training of peace building mechanism, to women empowerment, to even on issues of sustainability, etc. And for me, the reason why I'm doing it is because I want to create a society in which you all can live in not just in a peaceful way, but in a good way. In the SG's remarks today, he said that we are in a world that is increasingly getting more panicky, getting people are more fearful of their future, etc., and that has led them to respond in violence and hatred towards one another. We don't want this kind of world. I don't want this kind of world for my kids to live in. So that's why I have to do something about it, because no one is going to do something for my kids' benefit. So I've got to start it. And but once we start convincing other women, other mothers of this objective, then we've got lots of buy-ins. Then you've got more and more women starting to think that, oh yeah, this is something that I could believe in, that I could contribute to. And if I be part of this, then I am part of the movement to change the future.
Of a bigger picture. Owen.
I don't get a clap like John, I'm sorry. A woman has to be assertive, as we know it.
Many people who already have successful business, they don't make second business successful as well. It means even though they have enough experience, they don't know the result. So maybe somehow we are making success, so we are in front of audience now, but no one knows the future. So if you have anything in your mind, just start. That's the point.
That's it. Just start, be resilient, dream, and have passion. Thank you all very much. Now.